you can hear the air coming out of the building at Good Counsel, and then DePaul got to stop, and you just knew they were going to score, and DePaul scores, and it's 36 seconds left on the clock, and they need the field goal to tie it up. They scored extra point to tie it up, and I'm like, I was watching because I'm like, let me see if the veto gene is in Nicky, right? Is he gonna go for it all? So because I come from the same household, and he played safe, but I couldn't criticize him because you need to know that's bulletin board material in every locker room.
And if you feel any way, please charge it to my brain and not my heart.
Of course, everyone wants that Notre Dame job. Everyone wants to be on NBC in prime time every week of guaranteed games.
When you make decisions going into your high school or transferring from your high school, those are big decisions that will affect the rest of your life.
This episode of Keep It a Buck is brought to you by Ignite Performance Lab, located in Paramus, New Jersey. Welcome to another week, cutting through the cupcake portion of the schedule. Headed to the part that I'm really going to enjoy. We had some Zone 6 classics this week. We had a couple of out-of-state games. Bosco brought Monarch, Florida up. Bergen went down to West Boca. DePaul went out to Good Counsel, Maryland. Joe's went out to St. John's College. We also had Del Barton. They played, not mistaken,
Malvern Prep.
So, we had some good games. And then locally, like we said, we had the classics: St. Peter's, Union City, West Orange, PCTI, Hudson Catholic versus
NCA.
Newark Collegiate Academy. So we had some games, man. Surprisingly, while we was at it, Millville is 0-2.
Yeah.
Donovan Catholic is 0-2. Wasn't expecting that. To me, Donovan Catholic was a dark horse to sneak into the state championship. And it's not like they can't figure it out and do it. But if I felt like anybody could have presented a problem for DePaul in the playoffs, I thought it would be Donovan Catholic. They had, Caden, the quarterback.
Davis.
Caden Davis transfer in. They had a really good wide receiver transfer in from who I think is going to be a Division I kid. I believe he's from like Brick or Wall. Syracuse is heavy on him as a tight end. They have Kai Pritchard. They had another lineman. Like they had some guys come in and they're 0-2 after playing a public school schedule, which is a surprise to me. But this week's top 10, man. Let's talk about the top 10. Is there any shakeups? Anything going on?
All right, well, let's just go through this week's schedule. So first, 10 we had last week at Rancocas Valley. They played Pleasantville, and the score there was 28.
20 to 8?
20 to 8. Mm-hmm.
So what I'm seeing is at this point in the season, a lot of our resources for the stats hasn't been updating.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got to give it a little while. We'll just hold off on,
Yeah, start calling. The faster you guys get your stats in, the faster we can announce them on the show.
And highlight your kids.
Right, absolutely. We would love to do it, but we don't have anything for Rancocas Valley. So any school that didn't update, if we can't find it and we're looking through multiple sites, we won't have them.
Yeah, if you win, it's harder for us to bounce you out of the top 10. So
right.
You win, you stay for sure.
So let's talk about Millville for a second, though. Like, like last week, you know how we said that Talik was like 80% of Pope John? Is it that Lodazier Brooks is not there?
Yeah, they had a few. It wasn't just Lodazier.
They had a QB. That was decent.
Does he graduate or is he there and what's going on?
What do you mean when you say
the QB from last year?
I can't really tell you what's happening with them. I mean, Justin, you probably, because they participate in your classic, right? So I'm pretty sure you got an early look this summer. Like, did you see, like, any signs for this happening?
Not at all. They were competitive during the summertime. They got guys that still could fly around, a lot of athletic ability, but maybe the issue is inside the trenches for them right now. So that, I don't think, a lot of the South Jersey schools, they don't lack skills, as we know, right? So Millville issue that they might be running into, because I don't believe the quarterback is the same quarterback from last year. But, yeah, they 0-2, rough start.
And sometimes we can be prisoners of the past too, right? Because sometimes there's a thing like prisoners of the moment and prisoners of the past. Kind of like when we was talking to Coach Ab in regards to Tom's River. I can't believe Tom's River is not in there. It's like, well, Tom's River is not the Tom's River it's been, right? But Millville, we gave it to them because of who they've been. Clearly, they're not them right now, right?
Yeah, and I saw like
Preseason.
what they did before, of course, but then also I did get to see them, like I said, 7-on-7, and usually when we do the 7-on-7, they're usually in like the hardest bracket that we have. That's like on that main field that we do. So I'm surprised that they're on too, but because they actually put on a good display during the summertime.
I mean, or maybe we just got to give props to Atlantic City because they was good last year too.
They were.
Their program is on
They
the
were.
swing, right? Because Atlantic City's 2-0. Shout out to Atlantic City because that's who they lost to.
Rancocas has a big one on their schedule. They will play St. Augustine Prep, who's also
Okay.
right now in the top 10. So they will have a big game.
Okay. All right. So look forward to that. Rancocas Valley. You are new to our top 10. This is your second week. That maybe you'll be still there. Or I mean, you won your game, so I'm assuming you will be. Get us some stats so we can highlight some of your players. All right. So moving right along, Ramapo did not play last week. Glassboro played Haddon Heights. It was 52-0. I mean, that's that.
Quarterback Jack O'Connell was 9 of 17 for 213 yards, 3 TDs. Saab had a real cool day. I call it a Wednesday. There's nothing really to write home about. He had a cool day, but so Glassboro's rolling right now.
And then there's Amari Saab is the other that's the other brother that you were talking about. So he had three receptions for 81 yards, and Xavier had 4 for 70 on as far as receiving wise.
And neither of them led that team in receptions. One of the other receivers, I believe, had 8.
I don't have that up here.
Yeah.
It's possible. All right. And then there's a Makai Parker. It says 2 for 65, and that's 216. So, yeah, keep doing what you're doing, Glassboro. Do they play St. Augustine? I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me look. No.
Glassboro's a
Small
Yeah.
group 2.
2, I believe.
Group 2. Yeah, they're group 2 for sure.
All right. Well,
they're gonna see like you're gonna pass like the Cedar Groves from up here.
okay.
But they, their schedule. Hey, they don't make their schedule at the end of the day. So, but they are, Glassboro has a ton of talent.
Nice. So moving right along to number 7, St. Augustine, as you said, versus Paul the 5th, or Paul 5 is who they played. 26-0. They got a lot of shutouts.
Yeah, we kind of said it last week that it was no surprise that I think we believe that they were going to roll Paul for sure.
It's Paul 6. Sorry.
Paul the 6. Yeah, they didn't have any challenges that we thought that was gonna slow them down going into this week.
All right. And then on to our Zone 6 Classic, St. Peter's Prep versus Union City, 42-15. Tell us about it.
I mean, crazy day, but we only had to push that game back by an hour due to the lightning in the area. We was able to get the game done without any rain or any lightning. So the only time the game stopped is because the alarm in the stadium went off for like 3 minutes, but then we resumed action, and that didn't stop Tyler Bell for going 13 for 18, 265 yards, 5 touchdown passes, and then he also had 1 on the ground. So, really big game for him, but also a big game for Hunter Watson, who had 3 of those touchdown receptions, and he caught all those touchdown passes all in the first half. He had 4 catches for 109 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Nice.
And shout out to, we call him the water gun kid now, Christian Cruz, big 29-yard touchdown catch that has the internet going crazy right now.
Okay, water gun. All right. So it sounds like it was all successful. You weathered through the weather.
I mean, I think that was a problem all up the coast the
Yeah.
whole week. Like all of the games were moved.
But that's not our first time. Like this, like on this like weekend.
Yeah, you just got that luck.
This is our like.
Switch the
This is like our no like
It
no.
just- this
It's not even.
weekend
It's
that
not
it does
no.
you.
It's not this weekend actually. It's actually a St. Peter's thing. And I say that because we do a lot of games with them, and it started, I believe, 2 years ago when we were down in Atlanta. Halftime was about an hour due to lightning in the area. We was out playing at Morehouse. We was playing Creekside. All right, hour weather delay. Then I believe a year or two ago, as well, we had that day Cedar Grove versus Shabazz. They literally lined up the kickoff. Lightning. That game gets moved to the next day. Then we got pushed back. DePaul and St. Peter's. So St. Peter's is always an equation when it comes to some lightning, but they did, put up a lot of points for sure, and they definitely showed off for
It was
sure.
kind of funny because the kid caught the touchdown, Christian Cruz. He ran. They all went to like the water gun machine, and they was they did their little skit, and the PA announcer is like, I guess this is a good time to say we have a water gun machine over there for anybody who wants to go play.
Nah, it was perfect timing, for it, and our PA announcer, he was actually a good sport about it because he is Union City's PA announcer. So appreciate the love for sure.
I want to say for Union City too, man. It's a tough break, but I always respect teams that accept the challenge. And they
Absolutely.
no back down at all. And it's a young team. They lost a lot from last year, but I believe at some point these will be the games that play a major part when they start rolling and they start to really see what they're capable of. So shout out to Union City, man. I saw some positive things, and I guess we can call a bad outing for them. I saw a lot of positive things they could take from that. I don't think they'll see much more like what they saw against St. Peter's for the rest of their season.
Yeah, St. Peter's brought out some new uniforms as well. New gray uniforms. I think I'm still like Lenny. I think I'm a fan of the black ones. Those black ones. Something about those black uniforms for
I see
sure.
white I like in the black joints. Yeah.
All right. All right, so moving on to our number 5 team, Winslow. They played Highland Regional and the score was 47-0.
For me, Winslow is like it's tough to rank, right? Because we do want to reward them for taking on the schedule they take, but like in our think tank in regards to movement, should there be some movement, right? Let's just be honest. Well, I guess we can wait to the next team to really talk about what we discussed, but like we didn't move Winslow for their loss against IMG for what they showed, but then this week now coming up they have Bergen, and it's like you can't continue to reward them for playing tough, right? If they beat Bergen, that's huge, right, in the movement. But let's just say they lose to Bergen and we vowed that we would leave them there. Let's be honest, like nobody on the remainder of that schedule is going to test Winslow, right? So Winslow could essentially not be penalized for losing 2 games and then find themselves in the number 1 slot possibly, right? Or definitely the number 2 because the other teams now go into the blood sport part of their schedule and they're just going to cruise through the rest of their schedule. So, at this point, like I might be having some buyer's regret in regards to leaving them at that spot because it's like, do we penalize DePaul now for their loss, right? You know what I'm saying? And that's the precedent you set. Well, if you didn't move Winslow, how do you move DePaul for a loss, right? And now you get that thing when it's kind of like if you just kept it real from the get-go, like you lose, you drop, who knows how far you drop, then it just is what it is. There's movement, right? And there's opportunities to move back up or to fall out. So that was a lesson that, I learned this time around on, contributing to polls.
No, definitely for sure. I mean, they got the Bergen game, and then we'll see what really St. Augustine is really made of, within our top 10, right? But then after that, you talking about you playing an 0-2 Millville team, Camden East Side, Mainland, and Cherokee. So like, their bulk of their schedule is in the first month of the year.
So they can win all the rest of that and still
get ready for the playoffs, and then you play who you play based off of your group.
I think Cherokee presents the Cherokee and St. Augustine will, present probably the toughest challenges for them. Cherokee is a proud program, some tough kids, well coached. St. Augustine is made in the model of Winslow. When you can just go get your kids and handpick your kids, like they got some kids with some pride on their team too. So That'll be that'll be good for them.
All right. Well, shout out to Nakeem Powell. He had 9 carries for 105 yards. He's a senior. I don't think we've ever spoken to him about him. He was number 21 when they played IMG, just for knowing purposes. So we want to move on to DePaul now. DePaul played Good Counsel. Sounds like it was a good game. The score was 21-22, with Good Counsel taking the win.
That's a hard, tough fought game for DePaul. I mean, I was jumping around from watching Bergen versus West Boca, Bosco versus Monarch, and DePaul. And so I said I'll jump into the DePaul game a little later on. I turned the DePaul game on. It was the beginning of the second quarter, and it was 21-0 already. And I'm like, whoa, they about to get boat raced. They about to get their doors blown off. And I looked at, the size of the opponent, in Good Counsel. They looked the part. They had some really big kids on the team. Like they look like the traditional Good Counsel teams, right? Because I know like some of these out of state games, I looked at, the kids, and it's like, whether I'm looking at Chaminade Madonna, they just didn't bring enough ass to the fight. They just too small up front. I'm looking at American Heritage Plant, wasn't really impressed by that, in regards to, but when you look at like St. Francis, different teams, like you like, damn, they got some guys. They look good getting off the bus. That's what
Even
I
like
saw.
East St. Louis, like
Yeah,
like
that's what I saw from the council, and then I watched Derek Zammit be that difference maker that I said that I believe he and Lamar Best are. Like they can kind of change games, and he was careless with the ball from him early in the game, and that kind of helped put him in that deficit. And then he took them out of that. Like he literally started to use his legs and create passing lanes with his legs, create first downs, move the chains, and before you know it, you looked up, and Uncle Mo was on DePaul's side. Like you can hear the air coming out of the building at Good Counsel, and then DePaul got to stop, and you just knew they were going to score. And DePaul scores, and there's 36 seconds left on the clock, and they need the field goal to tie it up. They scored extra point to tie it up, and I'm like, I was watching because I'm like, let me see if the Vito gene is in Nicky, right? Is he gonna go for it all? So because y'all come from the same household, and he played safe, but I couldn't criticize him because all the momentum was on his side. The second half, they shut Good Counsel out.
because
Good Counsel couldn't
even
score
if you go
points.
to overtime, you still got that momentum.
Yeah,
Right.
like we've proven we can move the ball on you now,
Right.
and you can't move it on us, right? Like different because Vito was in a situation where I don't think they beat St. Louis, East St. Louis, if they let that go into overtime. So he had to just, we're gonna get him out of here now. So I'm not criticizing Nicky's call on that, but they went for the extra point and they missed the field goal. It's 21-20 ball game.
Yeah, I think with the slow start, one of the things, for the most part, I don't think any coach wants to have their quarterback, have 36 passing attempts. All right. I mean, you're playing from behind. When you're playing from behind, because if you run the ball, the clock is running against you. So, being in a situation, I don't think DePaul wanted to at least, think that they had to throw the ball 36 times to try to win a game. So, looking at that,
Yeah,
I think it's
288 yards. He still, like you said, you should have used his feet, and he still threw for 288 yards.
yeah, because I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember Derek having a rushing game over 100 yards. So to go for 122 yards, that is impressive. And, once their schedule picks back up again, that's something that people are going to have to account for sure.
I think he has had a few last year because that's how he came to my attention. Because I'm like, wow, like
The touchdowns were there.
dangerous.
The touchdowns were there as far as on the rushing end from him, but they were in shorter, like red zone situations. But to go for over 100,
Nice. Shout out to Mason James also, 4 receptions for 123 yards.
And not for nothing, like that was a thing that was going on with the ball too. Like I don't know if it was a lack of focus and things because there were kids not making plays they usually make. Like Mason James could have had a way bigger day than the day he had. And he had a good day, but it's not a good day if you lose.
Right.
We got to see Kyron DeBose show up in some big moments in that game. But overall, it's just the clock was against them, and like Justin said something that was real interesting to me. Like you hear a lot of times like teams put emphasis on finishing, right? And we look at that. We look at like the defense, the offense. Very rarely do we look at and put that pressure on the kicker, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta finish too, because the
Right.
extra point is supposed to be a gimme,
Yeah.
right? But you got a job and you're expected to finish too.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
they've been on the opposite side of this last year. Kind of like it happened in the Bosco game. Bosco kicker missed, the extra point.
True.
And when you walk out of that game, but even though you got all these other scenarios, you thinking about the last scenario of your last opportunity, and you got to take advantage of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that being said, I guess we'll talk about if we're moving DePaul when we do rankings. We won't talk about if we're going to move them just yet, but it's something to think about. Let us know what you think. We'll tell you what we're going to do, but let us know what you think. Should DePaul get dropped down or should they stay where they are? All right, so moving right along to number 3, St. Joseph's versus St. John's. Nas is not here, but he did take St. John's. St. Joseph won 34-19.
I would have attributed Nas taking St. John's to an emotional decision, but I really can't though, because St. John's College, depending on what poll you look at, they was ranked in the top 25 in the country. On Max Preps, they are 163 slots better than St. Joe's. So I can't say that Nas was being emotional. He was probably using the data, right? We were probably being emotional, just flat out going straight New Jersey all the way through. But that was another game that had. So we've witnessed this and early on in the year in a few games, right? We watched Winslow let IMG jump out on them and then have to walk it back. We watched Bergen jump out on, I think they jumped out on East St. Louis
14-0,
and then East St. Louis walked it back. We watched Joe's jump out on St. John's College, and St. John's College walked it back. And the beautiful thing about when you got to get those type of wins is your kids learn something about themselves. In years past, like I know you were very familiar with it. Your kid came through it. Those are the games that Joe's lose, right? Those are those games. And talking to Nate Bailey, shout out to Nate Bailey. Nate Bailey made a comment to his mother in which he said, it's just different this year. Like as it was happening, where it seems like it's falling apart, he said everybody just continued to work. Nobody even flinched at it. Everybody just continued to work, and then you see what happens late in the game. But a lot like Good Counsel, what's it, WCAC, that league there? They're like the Big North. They're like the Super Conference, right? This kid was huge. The D lineman was huge, littered with Division I guys, Michigan, Coastal Carolina, like all on the D line.
It's a great road win. Like, not just being battle tested. It's their first game of the season, right? You talking about a team had a game that they didn't forfeit. The other team forfeit, so they didn't play last week. They didn't play a game scrimmage. So to go out on a road to get a big win like that, and if you talk about this team was so many spots ahead of them in the rankings and different polls, I think this is a great win for St. Joe's, regardless of they had to get it back together in the second half and keep it rolling. But to be in a first 4-quarter game scenario where usually you got the cramps, you got different phases. No one has played 4 quarters of football since last season for them. So I think that's a great road win, and being tested like that on the road is gonna be a good I think that was a good test for them, because when it comes to, they're gonna have to play Bergen on the road this year, right? They get to have Bosco home, but being tested away from
Paul on the road.
Yeah, DePaul as well.
St. Peter's on the road.
And get well to Lamar. I know at some point, I think it was about 21-24, I think the score was, when Lamar went out with and he did come back in for one play. He went out with the hamstring. I know that has been bothering him, so we're hoping that he gets well soon with that. But they still pulled it together. The interception from the kid, help me, Ryan Barry.
Ryan Barry.
Right.
Sealed the game.
Welcome to the party. Right.
Okay.
That sealed the game, and we'll give you that. Like at the end of the day, like you said, it's just one play at a time. You got to keep going. Last week we noticed that, and I said under Augie, I believe that it would be different. It's not just a physical thing, but it's emotional and mental, and that takes resilience. It takes perseverance to have that type of mindset. And I think that that's what I seen him starting last year with them, and now you see it actually play out on the field, and that's how you finish.
I mean, so all I thought about when I replayed this week, right? Thinking about Bergen at West Boca, thinking about Bosco and Monarch, Joe's in St. John's College. The DePaul, I probably was a little higher on DePaul than most people, but I thought that DePaul would run the table out of state too. I mean, coming into the season, I was telling people because like a lot of people deal with who left and blah blah blah. Like, when you're very familiar with the rosters of who's coming, who's next, who's being plugged in. I said, I believe we're going to see a big North of old, where they go on the road, and unlike the years prior, like our teams go on the road and
struggle,
taking it on the chin. Now they're going on the road and they're all winning, right? Like DePaul should have won that game, right? I know we can't deal with would have, could have, should have, but they should have. And all of those teams would be undefeated on the road with one more out-of-state test in the Battle of the Bridge. But then they would come back and it would look something like the Big North that we all grew to love, where it's just like you got to be there because it don't matter what happened with Team A and Team B, and if Team A is better than Team B, Team C could still beat them, and Team D could still beat Team A. Like, we're coming back into that. That's something I predict, and I love watching our guys, go on the road and hold it down. Like, I'm gonna tell you a little. Most times I'm a little obnoxious. So what I did is, everybody knows I got a lot of family down in our Broward County, and then you go down and, when you're in Florida, you can't talk about New York, New Jersey football. It doesn't exist because they don't know any better. But, me, I shut down all arguments because I can pull up on the phone, when Bosco's undefeated against St. Thomas Aquinas, where my in-laws go to school, right? All of them go there. You've never beat Bosco, right? And then I'll pull up, Georgia, we talk about when Bergen went down there and smoked their boots, put a running clock on them. When Grayson had, the greatest show on turf, right? And so I was telling a cousin-in-law, I said, Florida, everybody knows, hands down, got some of the best athletes in the country. Like,
absolutely.
New Jersey's too small. We can't even mess with them when it comes out to what they turn out. I said, but when it comes to programs, right, and teams, like, we can play with y'all. So I've showed him where we've beaten them in years past. And he's like, oh, those are outliers. So he's a pretty big dude. He's like 6'5", 340 pounds or whatever. So I wanted to be careful because he don't look like he got all the screws there. So I sent my other cousin-in-law, I said, hey, show this to your husband, right? So I sent her the screenshots of the Bosco game as it was being played. Bosco, and I strategically screenshotted when Bosco was up 21-7, even though the other school, Monarch, was about to score. And then I sent it when Bergen was up. I think, 20-something to 7 as well. And I just sent the screenshots. I said, hey, can you ask your husband if he knows any of the kids on these teams? Because I knew he'd have to see New Jersey first, So she goes, yeah, he knows all of the kids and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I heard the announcer saying, but I didn't talk about what I really sent it. But I guess I can let y'all know. I was just letting y'all know, like, we was putting belt to y'all.
Jersey's here.
Jersey's here.
Maybe South Florida come back up here next year.
You make it happen, Jess. I know the wheels are turning.
No, absolutely. I mean, they've had, I remember one time they had success up here, and this when they were loaded. I think they had Dalvin Cook. Miami Central came up here, and it was bad. Yeah. That was, oof.
I mean, but even if we go with that was a Bosco team that ended up they was like 6-5. They just barely cleared 500 up here that year.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, shout out to Joe's for getting that win on the road. And next is Don Bosco, 38. They played Monarch. 38-21 was the score.
I never felt like that game Bosco was in trouble at any point with that game. There's a mojo Bosco has right now, and they came out on that mojo and just roll with it.
No,
that was the least interesting game to me. Like I looked and I said, oh yeah, this is in the bag.
Yeah.
Oh, I left at halftime.
Yeah.
I mean, we of course had to get it, ready for the next day for our event. But even if I didn't have an event, I probably still would have left at halftime. It was like one of those games where like, all right, yeah, it's only a 2 possession or 3 possession game. Anything could happen. But being around football for so long is like, all right, you just know that they're just gonna take off and pull away from them. You see the flags that Monarch are getting. You can tell that they're not in the same condition. Like our kids. Like I said, the discipline wasn't the same, and then they not taking care of the ball, turning it over, like of how they have the pick six, then they fumble on a kickoff return, right? Bosco gets back in, within their red zone, so sloppy play, that factor into like knowing that all right, this team is just going to, at some point, just take off, for sure. But the energy, was great. A lot of people, showed up as far as the Bosco alumni, Bosco fan base. Student section was fully packed from bottom row to the top, for sure. Head coach of the New York Giants, Brian Dabble, he was in attendance on the sideline. Of course, Carson's dad was there, and it was Carson's first start. So, Carson had a lot of buzz coming out of Texas. So people definitely wanted to see him. And I'm not just saying like people, a lot of little kids on the sideline wanted to see Carson for sure. So it's in one game and how social media works. Everyone hears something, or you related to this person, or this is your story, and people pulled up to see like, okay, who's this kid that's a sophomore? Is he going to be our next great quarterback here at Don Bosco Prep?
So I mean, well, a lot there. There's a DB at Bosco right now that just happened to just the ball just keeps finding him, right?
Yes,
Jack
Demena, Jack Demena.
Jack Demena. How many interceptions?
He has 3 interceptions.
I think didn't he have three last game?
No, he had two in the he had two in the Melissa game,
Okay.
and then he had the pick six in the first half. Versus Monarch.
Shout out to him,
Absolutely.
Seemed like a ball hog. Just
Come my way. It's mine.
definitely for sure. But that defense, I actually I kind of starting to like that defense a little bit more for sure. And then as far as those linebackers and Makai, I got a video to post later, but Makai was out there hitting for sure. You can hear the pads. Like you ain't got to add that Netflix fake sound effect. He was hitting for sure. But they're flying around. Their defense. Not just the defense, but their team. They all seem like they're starting to gel well. Like these are guys that actually like each other. You know how you got some football programs that might be very talented, but the kids don't maybe. After we leave football practice, do we hang out together? These kids seem like they actually, like each other. So seeing that bond and see how they communicate with each other, that might, take them a long way.
Nice. All right. So, and going on to our number one, Bergen Catholic. They went down to Florida and played West Boca. They had the win 21-14.
Yeah.
Scrappy win, real scrappy win. West Boca and Bergen was almost like mirror images of each other in regards to the style they want to play. It was real physical football. And then the funny part to Bergen a lot of times is like I commented last year, I called them trying to be cute when they were playing Joe's and realized that we're not going to be able to win cute, and then threw all the cute stuff out the door and went to power football to win the game. Well, this was the total opposite. They came out, scrappy team. Like, West Boca was scrappy. They was both teams is hitting and everything. And then before you know it, Bergen like, all right, let's go air raid. And shout out to Trey Tagliaferri. Forgive me if I'm messing up your last name. Shout out to Austin Busso. They started going up top, and it was opening things up. And it was just funny to watch because it was like the total opposite. Like, tell me how you want it, we'll give it to you how you want it. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, we wanted to run over you. I mean, that you really don't want to let that happen. So go ahead. We're going to throw over you.
Yeah,
So
that D line.
funny.
Yeah, that D line definitely. The running game was not working for Bergen in that game. But like you said, Austin Busso, 155 yards off 6 catches. And then Trey had 3 touchdown passes. I believe Brian Porter caught the other one for around 28, 29 yards. But Bergen throwing the ball kind of in the air.
I love to see it because I had ran into Trey and his father down in Philly this spring, and I know coming in, he played he was on the varsity team as a freshman, and when you're on the varsity as a freshman, you pretty much feel like you're the heir apparent because Campanelli would be leaving, so he'd be the heir apparent, and then you get the all-world Sneed Walker, find out he committing to your school, right? So now it's like no different than Carson, Sneed's got the same pedigree. You know, you're Tom Coughlin's grandson. Your father played in the NFL, and that makes people uncomfortable. And I just love like competitors, right? Most people will pack it up and go. And you know, shout out to Bergen because I think Bergen does a really good job of making sure that they get all of their talent on the field. Like not a lot of schools know how to do
A
that.
big, I saw that in the first game.
Yeah.
Like the receiver rotation, how many people was playing, even on the defensive side of the ball. They might have like from so far what I've seen, like the biggest rotation. You know, where it's like we have so much talent, and you know you want to start seeing who's producing that. It's early in the year still to see who you're gonna be. You know, closing the year out with for sure.
I love it because it keeps kids engaged, right? It keeps kids engaged. Everybody feels a part of it, but more importantly, it tells kids like, hey, you can come here and you don't have to worry about starting, right? Because anybody that knows anything about recruiting, which is what kids are really worried about, it's all about if you get film, right? So Bergen has shown that you can come here and if you can really play football, we're gonna find a way to get you on the field, and then you just got to do what you
And
have
that's
to
and
do.
that's great coaching as far as to be able to manage that to get guys reps and everything. Because I would say in high school football, majority of guys like, all right, after camp, this is who we going with.
Mm-hmm.
You playing, right? All right, he get hurt, all right, then you coming in. So shout out to to Bergen Catholic for their coaching staff, right? When we see those, I always say this: when you see all those coaches on the sideline, I just be hoping that someone's doing something or doing like, all right, you might be special team, you might be doing like the rotation, but I hate those programs that got 80 coaches and ain't no rotation going on.
So yeah, I really like to see that. So back to Trey and Sneed, like I love the way they keep those two guys engaged, right? Nobody feels like they're being left out of it. Um, like I said, other programs, another kid would feel like they have to go. And Bergen has shown the ability, right? Which is it's just tough, right? Because it's lazy, right? When you at the end of the day, that mentality you just talked about is lazy, and I call it lazy because it's easy. It's easy just to say, Justin and Tristan are the best, and Will, our camera guy, you'll get in only if something happens to them. Like you said, you got to have somebody that's like, yo, all right, this series you're in, right? And then you have to be developing these kids to be able to rotate them like that as well. And maybe you don't get a lot early from them, right? But certain kids, as you get better from playing, and that's when you start to see when it's playoff time and all that. You're like, okay, who the hell is this kid now making plays? Yeah, he's been incubating,
No,
and now
absolutely.
he's here. You get what I'm saying? So I really enjoy watching that aspect of it, but enjoy nothing more than watching New Jersey handle their business on the road.
And that's the difference between like I think with the Big North as far as like our top schools where yes we have some guys that majority only play one way that can easily play both ways for the any other team or even their current team, but it's like okay we're gonna keep everyone involved. And I've been there on a team where playing with a Jabril Peppers, right, his freshman year he didn't get one handoff. Easily could have. Would have went to the crib. We got a huge line. He most athletic person on the team, but it's not about that. It's about involving other guys, the other guys that put in a commitment all off season that do their job, and someone or guys that's not going to hurt you at all. So it's not about playing favoritism and trying to make these kids be the Travis Hunter of the team. We don't have to do that with Big North football.
For sure.
All right. Well, now that we've discussed,
They running the ball. They running the ball this week too. I tell you that.
Okay. I'm excited to
I know.
see it.
Shout out to
We'll
Trey,
talk about-
271 last week, but I think Bergen will try to get back to the running game next week for sure.
We'll talk about it when we get to
Yeah,
the,
for sure.
the next game. But now we have to figure out, and we didn't talk about this previously, who are we going to choose for our offensive player of the week and our defensive player of the week? Now, I'll start off with offense. I think you kind of mentioned Tyler Bell, but then you also mentioned Hudden Watson. Like, who do you choose, or who else do you have?
He's got an ace in the hole.
So
Or-
two scenarios, right? And I want to because our game MVP of like the actual Lamar McKnight Classic. Shout out to Tyler Bell because any of the kids that I've seen coming through our org that goes to our middle school camp. I'm talking like because we got kids like. I'm looking back at some pictures now, and I'm starting to feel old. Where I got Jordan Thomas, Makai Allen, Tyler Bell, all in our middle school showcase, right? And now these are the guys that's gonna go on to college. So as far as for Tyler, going through Zone 6, being in camp, he was one of the Army Night guys. For him to show out, and I know it had to be a lot of emotions there because this is what that was his quarterback coach for sure. But to ball out 5 touchdowns, one on the ground, and with everything of what this weekend for us was about, and thank you again to the McKnight family for allowing us to put on a great classic. I do think Tyler is definitely up for a player of the week for offense because my other player of the week kind of did it in different facets, and that's David Moore.
Okay.
Got a big win over PCTI today.
West Orange.
Sorry.
David Moore.
David Moore of West Orange got a big win over PCTI, and David had a block punt score for a touchdown. He also had a pick six, and then he had 2 receiving touchdowns. And just to make it better for him, he's never beaten PCTI in his career. And shout out to Coach Darnell Grant on get his first win versus PCTI. So that was a big win, for their program. And being in, I think Lenny and I talk about it. I like giving player of the games really or player of the weeks to people that are in more competitive games.
Okay.
And I'm with him on that because he brought the David Moore thing, and I said, well, what about Bell? He said at 500, and then we had to really think about it. David Moore, like he said, that was a game that they haven't been able to win over that West Orange. It was Group 5 Titan versus Group 5 Titan, right?
And they both needed a win.
Yeah.
Someone was going to fall to 0-2.
And in the classic, we had more of like what they call it, like a cross breed game, right? Where it's like that was Union City taking a shot at Goliath. You get what I'm saying? So I'm with Justin to go with David Moore simply because he was in a much more evenly matched game. It would almost be if Union City was playing one of those schools. Like they're all
No, absolutely, and that's why when we did the schedule,
bracket.
even though we were supposed to have 3 games, in a row, that game was sitting right in the middle because the first crowd might want to watch that game to know it was a good one, and then even the last crowd that's coming in probably for the second half is going to want to watch some good football. So unfortunately, it didn't happen that way, but we knew that was going to be a close, competitive game, especially while PCTI waits for Gabe to get back.
Now that right there, that's the first. When I asked Justin to score, that was the thing I said. I said, "Whoa, that's a really close game without all everything Gabriel Miles. When he comes back in the playoffs, that's going to be something that might not be good if they're running the West Orange again."
Yeah, they're gonna. I think more than likely at some point, whether it's playoffs, depending on how the bracket, works itself out, it's a high chance that they're gonna play each other again for sure.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. Officially announce your player of the game or of the week.
Due to my criteria, I'm going with David Moore. Congratulations of West Orange High School. David is actually committed to UMass.
Okay. Nice.
Which is crazy. Tyler Bell is
Going to UMass.
So big look for UMass.
Yeah.
Big for
Absolutely.
UMass. Yeah. Actually, and Christian Alvarez of Joe's, and he had a really big. He was taking on like a DN that's off from Auburn, Bama, and all of that. So UMass guys was out there putting it in. Pause.
All right. And so that was for offensive player of the week, right? So
That's correct.
defensive player of the week. Who are we gonna give it to?
Oof. I don't have no one, off the top as far as defense that, stuck out for sure. I think Demena, he's playing, he's rolling for sure. So at least my person I'm gonna have to go with is Jack Demena.
What was the score of that game?
Oof.
Because as I said, I screenshot it when it was like getting carried away, and what's the name? Monarch only had 7 points at that point, but I believe they were on the goal line, about to go in.
38-21.
38-21. Okay.
But it just didn't feel like,
Yeah, because I was going to give it to the whole defense, thinking they held them
Alright.
to 7, but 38-21,
No, definitely we could do that. I think, like I said, those guys are gelling, and like I said earlier, that I'm starting to like this defense a lot. So not just Jack for getting a pick six, but that Bosco defense is playing well, and let's see if they can keep it rolling.
So that completes the episode. Well, this part of the episode. So if you're interested in the rankings and who we're going to choose for next week. Tune into part 2 of this week's episode of Keep It a Buck.